at least make it a good book. Feel good. They're like that 90s feel good rom-com, but in book form. That's a lot of money. She becomes a fugitive. You've got a massive fan here. Summer vibes. We've all been there. This one's for the girlies who used MySpace. I ate it up, left no crumbs. Hi everyone, welcome back to another video. I'm Ray, What Ray Reads. Follow me on Instagram and follow me on TikTok. We're having a bit of a heat wave here in the UK and I'm sitting in my bedroom, which can only be described as a sauna, and I'm pretty much melting, but don't worry. I've got my #1 fan. So thanks for clicking on the video and choosing to spend some time with me. I thought since we are in summer and we're at the cusp of our lovely summer season, I'd do a reading list of summer reads, books that I want to read or books that I've loved and read that I think would be perfect for the summer, for those days that you just want to throw a book in your bag, go to the beach, go to the park, maybe you're going on holiday, I'm jealous, and you want something that's very gripping, you're very absorbed in it, maybe you could read it pretty quickly, but it's got more substance or got more depth than some of the rubbish airport books that you end up picking up. I've selected books that either have a summer vibe or there's a thrilling, gripping element or a character that you just want to root for, and books that you'll feel immediately absorbed by. And I know a lot of people don't find time to read until summertime. That's when they pick up a book or they read quite a lot. So I wanted to be mindful and pick books that I think would be worth the time, because let's be honest, when you're a regular reader, you are spending a lot of time reading. If you're going to spend so much of your time, your valuable time reading, at least make it a good book. So without further ado, let's get into the books. I'll actually just cool myself down with my matcha. So the first book on the list is a book I read and listened to on audiobook fairly recently, and that is Margo's Got Money Problems by Rifu Thorpe. And I kind of, spur of the moment, decided to read this when I was browsing the books on Spotify. I was kind of blown away by it. I was immediately absorbed. The premise and the concept of the book's very modern, very millennial. I was immediately hooked. The story follows a young student who starts to have an affair with her professor at university.
You're joking. Not another one?
And she ends up falling pregnant. And against everyone's advice, her professors, who doesn't want the baby, he's already got a wife and child. Surprise, surprise. Surprise, surprise. And against the advice of her mum, she decides that she wants to have the baby, becoming a single mother, trying to get by in modern day America. And she's raising the baby alone whilst living with her roommates, and she's really struggling, but she's trying her best. Nobody's got any sort of belief in her. And then her distant ex-wrestler father splits up with his wife and decides to pay Margo a visit, and he starts to help out with the baby, and as their relationship's repairing, he's actually the help that she needs, and she finds he can offer her a lot of useful advice, and he's kind of the only person that's there for her at the end of the day. He believes in her and he wants to help her. He's also battling his own issues, and as she's struggling to find a job that's gonna support a single young mother, she decides to join OnlyFans, and she slowly becomes quite popular on there. What unfolds is a complex, layered story, a flawed but also magnetic female character, very millennial, and the complex stories of motherhood and the trials and tribulations, the ups and downs, the everyday struggle and the weight of that, especially doing it alone. Single mothers, there's something else. The book touches on millennial angst, the feeling of uncertainty and not knowing what the future holds. This book was a breath of fresh air. It was a great audiobook narrated by Elle Fanning, and it's also going to be adapted into a mini-series for Apple, I believe. So I will be seated. It was just very relevant. It felt tethered in reality and modern day reality, and the character didn't feel forced. It felt very fresh. Perfect for a day at the beach, and I highly recommend the audio too. The next book is The Rachel Incident by Caroline O'Donoghue. And if you're not new here, you know I absolutely live for this book. I'm constantly singing its praises. I'm constantly recommending it. I've literally not been shutting up about it since it came out. This is a coming of age story about how it feels to be in your 20s and you're discovering who you are, trying to figure out what you like, what you want to do with your life, but also how important our relationships and specifically our friendships are at that pivotal moment in our lives. We follow Rachel, not me, a young student living in Cork, and she's at university and she's also working part-time at a bookstore, and there she meets James, who soon becomes her best friend. They both become besotted with a local author and professor who actually turns out to be one of Rachel's teachers, and soon enough the three become entangled in a unusual relationship, shall we say, and Rachel also becomes entangled in an unusual dynamic with him and his wife. She's sort of struggling as a student and figuring things out, but then being brought into their more highbrow middle class life with their friends and the dinner parties and the opportunities that they could possibly give to her. What ensues is a hilarious, touching, heartfelt story about friendship, the highs and lows, the heartbreak, nights out, and the drama of being in your 20s and just having new fleeting experiences, but ones that shape you also. I particularly loved how this book focuses on the love story between the two friends and how important and powerful those relationships are, and their bond's the crux of the story. It also touches on class dynamics and identity, which I think is really important. I'd go as far to say that this is the perfect summer read. Fight me. Next, we're kind of shifting tone a little bit, and we're going for a bit of a darker subject matter, and that is Nightcrawling by Lelia Mottley. This is a heartbreaking and heavy but necessary story about a 17-year-old girl called Kiara who is out in the world. She's very much alone. She's living with a brother. Her mother's in prison and she's trying to keep their family afloat. She's trying to find steady work, not get kicked out of the apartment, and on top of that there's a young boy who lives in their apartment complex, and he's also struggling with similar issues. His mother has disappeared and he's been essentially abandoned, and Kiara takes him under a wing and she feels the need to protect him. The weight of all of this and the pressures of daily life trying to make it in America is really weighing her down, and one day she turns to sex work and she starts walking around Oakland late at night. One day she encounters the police. At first she thinks maybe she'd be getting into trouble, but she soon is exposed to the dark realities of police corruption, and ultimately as the story unfolds she becomes enmeshed in a police corruption scandal, and she's essentially the whistleblower to what has been happening in their city, what's been going unchecked, and that is targeting an already marginalised group of people, specifically women. As I mentioned, this is a heavy story, it's a darker one, but it reads very much similar to a true crime or thriller. You're very gripped in what's unfolding in the story, and it makes your heart ache for the characters, and it really shines a light on black girlhood, the hardships of daily life for working class Americans. When you've got no help, you've got no one to turn to, you're essentially out and alone, and you have to be the one to make the hard decisions, and just how unjust the system can be and how it's stacked and set up to target minorities. When I was reading about the book for the video, I discovered that this is actually based on a true event that happened in Oakland in California in the 2000s. I read this book maybe 3 years ago now, and it's a book that's really stayed with me and a character that really stayed with me. So if you want something a bit more gripping, a little bit more true to real life, I highly recommend this. Next is Deep Cuts by Holly Brickley. I absolutely loved this book and I listened on audio. I ate it up, left no crumbs. We follow two friends, Percy and Joe, who meet one night in a bar at university, and they bond immediately over their shared love for music, and they're completely sort of drawn to each other and feel an instant connection. Set against the backdrop of the noughties, we follow them from their 20s, from the college years to when they move away. They're working, they're having relationships, but all the while they're still in each other's lives, orbiting each other. Even if they don't speak for long periods of time, they still have a connection, using music as a touchstone for the time and how they're feeling. This one's for the girlies who used MySpace and may have been drawn to the indie sleaze scene of the late 2000s. She thought she was Alexa Chung. I really enjoyed my time with the book. There was moments that were frustrating. It reminded me a lot of Normal People, with the push and the pull and the will they or won't they of Marianne and Connell. It's very similar with these characters. They're kind of more than friends, but they don't want to ruin the friendship, and they're also sort of denying what's been there since the beginning. The audiobook was really gripping, plus it made me feel really nostalgic. I was only a child and a teenager during parts of when the book's set, but I was familiar enough with the time and the touchstones to feel connected to it. It's a coming of age. It's about creativity and passions, struggling to figure out what you want to do but ultimately following it, and it's also friends to lovers. Next is Brut by Dizz Tate. This is the story of a group of 13-year-old teenage girls roaming around Florida, getting into trouble, just being teenagers. We've all been there. And they become obsessed with the local preacher's daughter. She's a bit older than them and they all sort of idolise her in the way that only young girls can. One day, Sammy, the preacher's daughter, goes missing and the whole town's up in a frenzy. The young girls decide to do their own investigation and we follow them through the town, through the characters they meet, all during a sweltering Florida summer. This book's just very summer vibes. It's very minimal plot, so if you're into not much plot, more vibes, this one's for you. I found it very cinematic and I also loved how it captures that long stretch of summer when you're younger and everything feels sort of unlimited in a sense. Unlimited. It's like those school holidays, they feel like the forever. You don't really have that concept of time properly yet. So it really captures that teenage feeling where you're in between being a child and a sort of young adult as well. Summer feels endless. You feel like you've got freedom. You're starting to feel like an adult and you want to sort of push boundaries a bit, but you're still just a child. Plus the bond between the young girls is beautifully handled. And I noticed a lot of people saying this is very Sophia Coppola-esque. It reminded me of The Virgin Suicides, and other people have said it's also similar to The Florida Project. Both films I absolutely adored, and I would say that's kind of a great analogy for what the film sort of touches on. So yeah, if you want something a bit more, what's happening, what's going on, things seem strange, that one's for you. Next is The Vanishing Half by Brit Bennett. Oh Rachel, you're always recommending this book. Well, that's because she's an icon. This is the story of the Vignez twins, who grow up in a small, mostly black, rural community in the south of America, and when they're 16 they decide to run away together, but along the way their paths diverge. One sister ultimately ends up going back home and living a life in the community she was born and raised in, and the other sister meets a man, marries him, moves into a mostly white, middle-class American neighbourhood, and she is able to pass as white, but she can't outrun her past, and ultimately it comes back to find her, and we switch between various time periods and different characters. And the book beautifully tackles class, identity and race, and how they're such an integral part of our lives and our stories, and how our choices ultimately impact our lives for better or for worse. It's a family saga, but it's told in a beautiful, character-centred way, and every person in the book has a lot of depth. They're not just surface level characters. It feels very unique in that sense. It's just a very powerful story that I've never read anything like, and also that I've never been able to forget, and I need another Brit Bennett book immediately. So Brit Bennett, please write another book. You've got a massive fan here. Do you know what's funny? When I started, my hair was curly, but because the heat is so intense in this room, it's completely fell out. Next is Killer Potential by Hannah Deitch. I was sent this book by a publisher and it sounds iconic. I haven't read it yet, but it's going to be one of my summer reads, so I thought I'd share it with you. It's said to be reminiscent of the 1990s film and one of my favourites, Thelma and Louise. Watch it if you haven't, do yourself a favour. We follow a high-achieving tutor who's working with mostly rich white people, and she becomes involved in a murder and she flees, leading to a manhunt and a police chase across the country. Essentially, she becomes a fugitive fugitive from the law. A cat and mouse chase ensues. This book's said to touch on class, access and the illusion of the American dream that is sort of force-fed to a lot of people when they're growing up in America. It's also said to have queer representation, which we love to see. I simply can't wait to read it, and I will definitely be sitting on a beach reading that. Next is The Water Cure by Sophie Mackintosh, a book I have recommended quite a bit, but it really captures summer. It's just got summer vibes. Do you know what I mean? This is a more mysterious book. It'll be for the people that enjoy brutes. It's a dystopian feminist story set on an island, and we follow three sisters who've been essentially removed from the daily realities, and they live in isolation with the parents who've been telling them that they need to sort of fear the outside, fear the unknown, especially men.
She's got a point.
So they grow up a very sheltered life. When the father disappears one day and he doesn't come back, three mysterious men wash ashore and they become involved in the daily lives of the women. Should they trust these men? No! Fear them, or is there something more sinister at play here, and how are they going to escape it? I was hooked by this book and I just felt very engaged in the mystery and how it was going to end. It very much reminded me of I Who Have Never Known Men by Jacqueline Harpman. It's got that feel of unease and not knowing what happens right until the end. So if you enjoyed that, if you enjoy a more mysterious story that won't be spoon-fed to you, I think you'll really enjoy this. Next is Calla by Colin Walsh. Set against the backdrop of an Irish summer, we follow a group of high school friends who are reunited 15 years later when the story of their best friend's disappearance resurfaces and people start asking questions again. As times pass, they've gone on their own paths, they've lost touch, and they've never really been able to connect in the same way as they did when they were teenagers, especially after the trauma of losing one of the friends at such a young age. But they soon get pulled back into the disappearance and they start asking questions themselves. What happens is the lengths that people will go to, what the community will protect to hide the truth, and how ultimately, no matter how much people are willing to look the other way or protect someone, the truth will come to light. This is a beautiful burning literary mystery that will keep you guessing until the last page. In a similar way to Brutes, this book really captures that youthfulness, those teenage years, and how things are very intense and feel forever. Unlimited. And how your teenage experiences really are very poignant and shape you essentially for better or worse. I really loved this book. Plus it's set in Ireland and it's an Irish author, so... And the final book on the summer reading list. You didn't think we'd do a summer reading list without Emily Henry, did you? Of course not. It's Great Big Beautiful Life by Emily Henry, and this is another one that's personally on my summer reading list. I haven't read it yet because I refuse to pay £20 for a hardback book. Yes, I may be cheap, but I'm just saying, that's a lot of money. I also feel like Emily Henry books are perfect to read in the summer because they're very light, they're very quick to read, and they're also fast-paced and they've got summer vibes. They just need to be read on a beach. So this one's said to be a little bit different than her other romance books, as it switches between different time periods and characters. And in classic Emily Henry fashion, it follows two writers who are vying for the chance to tell the life story of a reclusive heiress. So enemies to lovers. It's said to focus on the highs and lows of this reclusive heiress's life, and we ultimately get the story through different points of view. So it sounds kind of classic Emily Henry, but we've got a touch of other elements that we don't usually get. So I do know that some people didn't love that, but I'm open. And I have heard people say, I'm not sure if this is true or this is a lie, but the narrative through the story is very similar to the narrative on Taylor Swift's song from Folklore, The Last Great American Dynasty. And I think that could have been an inspiration for this story, but don't hold me to it because that was just something I heard on the internet. But the thing about Emily Henry's stories is they're always sort of feel good. They're like that 90s feel good rom-com but in book form, and that's why I eat her up every time, because I am a sucker for a 90s rom-com. I will be reading that. Those are the books. I hope you've seen something that you want to read. Are any of these already on your summer reading list? What are some books that are on your summer reading list. What are books that you've been saying that you want to read for many summers but you haven't gotten to? Let me know. Thankfully, I haven't melted, but I am dripping in sweat. My hair's completely fallen out, but it was worth it to spend time with you lot. If you've made it this far, don't forget to like, comment and subscribe because it really helps me out. If you want to support me, you can support me here. I appreciate you all as usual. Thanks for watching. Take care and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.